talk a little bit about long-term value instead of short-term hype. Like you have mentioned before, that whenever there is a shiny object, everybody runs after it and then try to build on top of it. Every technology wave has created winners in the short term, and that is what even Gen AI era is doing. Very few actually create leaders in the long term. And the companies we still admire today, like Microsoft, Amazon, JP Morgan, Netflix, they have constantly working on making sure that they have the best architecture, enterprise and engineering discipline, long term capabilities that outlive every technology cycle.
Yeah.
So, what principles you think remain timeless despite of rapid technology change?
So I would say I would point to one person who I admire very much. His name is Warren Buffett. So he doesn't chase the market, right? He doesn't go after the bright shiny objects. If you look at his investment pattern,
Yes,
he invests in
long
Coca-Cola,
term.
he invests in stocks which are mundane, which are
Hmm,
boring, but they are used again and again and again, right?
hmm,
I'll give another example from my real life. That is, I usually go to the dentist once a year, 30-minute appointment. But that's not what keeps my teeth healthy. I brush twice a day. So
hmm,
that regular discipline, right? So,
hmm,
so the first principle that that you sort of mentioned is that we have to balance
hmm,
the instantaneous gratification with the long-term gratification, right?
hmm,
So we as human beings, our immediate reaction is that is we go for instantaneous gratification. What we see now, it's important. It's very important, right? So most leaders lived by most companies, they live quarter by quarter, right? So that's
yeah.
something which we cognizant about. But at the same time, look at Amazon, right? In the 2000, in the dot-com crash, they lost 80% of their value,
Hmm,
the investor value. But still, they were very focused on the North Star principles that they had.
hmm,
So they built, it was an internal data IT operations company which built the real large, the retailer, and also
hmm,
now the infrastructure, the web
hmm,
infrastructure created. So it's because they had the belief, the faith of the leap of faith in terms of sound architecture principles that they built on. They built everything without making shortcuts. They had a
hmm,
strong governance on their architecture. They built everything loosely coupled. So
hmm,
they built everything from the first principles
hmm,
without making shortcuts. Maybe they made shortcuts, but they kept a track of it and they remediated those once they went through the business cycle. So I think what that created is again a foundational architecture,
hmm,
foundational principles based on which they could actually deliver long-term value. Short-term value came, they would come out automatically. But I think the long-term North Star capability, that is key for a company which is serious about survival over decades, right? And we have seen, as you mentioned, we have seen JP Morgan Chase, Netflix, several others.
hmm,
Netflix came up with a very different architecture. They
hmm,
took advantage of the new streaming capability that was new, net new, and they monetized it. So similarly, other banks, some insurance companies, they have also done the same thing. That is, they have really thought it through, and they just didn't build something which would meet the needs of today and would not be able to sustain into the tomorrow. Of course, changes will come, but those changes have to be adapted. The changes have to be factored in, and it's a wise decisioning that goes around the core platform. So I think what Amazon built was a platform. Microsoft built with Azure is a platform in a fabric, which literally stand the test of time, with incremental innovation happening on those. But the foundational part doesn't change that much. And they can very easily incorporate new technologies, new innovative technologies, adapt to those, and make the platform more capability oriented, richer by feature capabilities. Because one challenges that we have is usually the front end gets more feature rich or over engineered, if
hmm,
not checked, and the back end gets less investment and more technical debt, if not governed. So I
hmm.
think those companies which can do the right balance between these two, they can literally stand the test of time.
I like the statement when you said that leaders should have more balance in their innovation with operational discipline.
So this is a difficult question because this is something which is evolving, being built, and experimented with. right? So in many cases, the operating model
Hmm.
gets corrupted by the AI governance. So the governance process, which is very malleable at this time, which is being
Hmm.
shaped, right, with the new technologies, with the new realization, with the new prioritization of activities that are being built. So typically, what I would say is that for companies, it is a test and learn cycle. That is,
Hmm.
it's difficult to get everything right in the first go because, as we had seen in the past, a classic example is that of big data. So when we
Hmm.
started with this, the company started aggregating all the information. There was a huge throughput of data which came along, and we realized that not all that data were important. So we went to smart data, from big data to smart data. That was the plateau of productivity which happened, right? So in this case, I'm going to assume the same thing is going to happen. That is, as we have some use cases, limited use cases, which go through a full generative to agentic AI implementation, there will be organizational learning, institutional
Hmm.
learning, which people will learn. And this would be, and the radars have to be really open for learning from those. That is, I'm going to strongly believe that there will be learnings which
Hmm.
will need to factor into our future initiatives, and there would be certain cases where the test of hypothesis is going to fail, and we would have to redo them or make some course corrections as we go forward, right? So I don't have a specific answer, ready-made answer for this. I would assume that in regulated industries, not assume that that's possibly a strategy that we took in my prior company, is that those where there is high regulatory pressure, we would stay away of making them our first test and learn topics. We would
Hmm.
rather work on those within the periphery of the organization where the risk of data leakage or the risk of the ethical use of AI would be minimal, safety issues would be minimal, and because there are a lot of things that we don't know today,
Hmm.
which are not really technology problems, which are societal problems. Right?
Hmm.
But now, as we are working with AI, we are entering into that boundary where it's not only technology, but it's also how society is going to use that data, how the EU Act, how the different policies, which are
Hmm.
still evolving, risk management, which is evolving, how those would be putting their policies for that. But for simple things like that expense reimbursement, there you
Hmm.
can have a very granular, very well-defined policies, and based on which you can get some efficiency, by which people can submit expenses through a mobile application. Those things can be auto-approved, and it can save some cycles. I think these are some of the test and learn that companies can take. Very simple processes where the risk of customer challenges or customer issues or ethical issues can be minimized or eliminated, and we have a sort of a safe harbor within which we can test out and learn. Most important is learning as a part of it. That is where the data is failing, where the LLM, we need to make sure that we provide more information in terms of, again, the different technology jargons that I don't want to talk about that here, but how we can make use of the data more efficiently, more effectively, and govern the
Hmm.
result, not only in terms of the output, but also in terms of the outcome. That is, are we really impacting the P&L, right? Are we really getting shareholder value? Are we really getting speed to market? Are we really getting lower total cost of ownership? Economics is an extremely important part because when we initially do live in the data domain, when we deploy this into the cloud, I've seen some of those numbers. Numbers can be very high.
Hmm.
So, so that cost benefits analysis, the TCO analysis has to be done, which when you're doing the initial part, you possibly have missed those things. So it's the full picture, getting the full picture end to end is important. And that's where I think architecture, finance, HR, legal, privacy, all these departments need to come together in order to make sure that we make the right decision.
Yeah, and that leads to what I'm thinking right now is every major technology wave has eventually become invisible. We no longer talk about cloud first companies or internet first companies. We simply expect those companies to be adhering to those technologies. I wonder if AI will ever have that time and it would follow the same path. Perhaps in a few years we won't distinguish between AI and non AI companies. Will simply distinguish whether organizations built on that capabilities to continuously learn, adapt, and make better decisions, like how you mentioned, and those that cannot.
This is a very interesting point, the question that you asked. So I follow Ray Kurzweil, who talks about singularity or AGI, and also Yuval Noah Harari, who talks about AI from a very different historian's perspective.
Hmm.
So there's a concept of singularity, that
Hmm.
is when machines, AI, and humans are going to integrate, right? Now,
Hmm.
what will happen when singularity happens? That's not going to follow the same paradigm that we are living in today. So
Yeah.
a lot of uncertain, unknown is possibly is on the is as on store for us. So that's where I think singularity, and there's a fantastic book by Ray Kurzweil on this. So it is very difficult to see. The thing I would like to mention here is that when we talk about technologies that we have talked about before,
Hmm.
cloud, data, uh, agriculture innovation, industrial innovation, in all these things, humans were in the center,
Yes. Now we are
right?
trying to replace.
Now we're replacing humans. So what that would mean, we don't know, right? Maybe it
Hmm.
would be very simple, but maybe there is some element of uncertainty that we will be up for some surprise. Don't know at this time. So that's, I think, if we take the concept of, it's a concept at this time, the concept of singularity, what would happen? There are predictions that are made by many forward thinkers who are making, again, lot of very well informed or very good predictions. There is a very good paper by Hamadi of Anthropic, who talked about the by love of grace,
Hmm.
5 points where AI would change a lot of things that we do in our lives. Very forward thinking view on the, and that is something which we built Anthropic on. So I think what we would be, there would be some surprises. I would assume that. That is, for the first time, humans which have ruled the planet for thousands of years. So possibly we'll see some competition, right? Which we don't see from other species. We may see it from here. And how we deal with this, it is
Hmm.
not a technology issue alone. So that's why socio-technical, right? Economic, all those things, legal, for example, the
Hmm.
laws will change significantly for that. Privacy rules will change significantly because of that. So I think we are talking about a new ecosystem which is going to evolve, and it's not fiction anymore; it's reality. But
Yeah.
as we say that fiction, the fact is stranger than fiction. So possibly we'll see something like that in our lifetimes.
For sure. And I'm very positive about it. So, Arnav, last question for you. What advice do you give to the leaders and CIOs, CTOs, CEOs who are currently shaping this AI strategy?
I would say that it is important to look into the foundational capabilities. So
Hmm.
with the change, we are better positioned to look at it in an informed way through an evolution rather than a revolution.
Hmm.
So, yes, changes, disruptive changes will happen. There will be natives which will come along. But for established companies which have a business, which have a set of customers to support, I think there would be a method of incremental enhancement, test and learn. I think that is the model that
Hmm.
McKinsey paper talks about that as well. That is, for established companies, it is possibly a good approach to adapt, make a change, adapt to it, and then have a proper transformation roadmap in
Hmm.
order to manage it, like we manage any transformation. Right? Galbraith model, Curtin's model. So any established model would work in that case. And in some cases, of course, there will be the dark horse. There would be the disruptors which will come along. Possibly there would be natives which would be using AI. But again, time will prove those things. Those test out those hypotheses. But I would say that take a well-informed, step-by-step strategy, minimize risk, and maximize product and efficiency and effectiveness. I will highlight on one thing which I follow closely. That is, plans are useless, but planning is priceless.
Oh,
So
nice.
there will be disruptions, there will be changes, changes will happen, things will emerge.
Hmm.
But if someone has the discipline of planning, then the probability of having success is higher than someone who is not able or capable of planning. So again, Tyson's famous quote: "All strategies work unless you're punched on your face." So I think it's important to build that capability, that
Mhm.
discipline, and be prepared, be flexible and adaptable as changes happen. Factor those changes through the filters of risk minimization and profit maximization. And
Mhm.
of course, there's a big ethical piece to this as well. So ethical is important in this case.
Thank you so much for joining Tech Talk. It was pleasure having you. Great insights, and I'm very sure that audience is going to love it.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Alex.